got an email, I guess it was yesterday, saying, I've got a guest who says basically the fact that we're paying more taxes may be a good thing. I thought, wait a second, I need to talk to this individual. Maybe I'm missing something. And we have that individual with us this evening, Daniel J. Pilla. He is the author of How to Win Your Tax Audit and a few other books we're going to get to in just a moment. But, this issue of new tax regulations has been a surprise to many because, well, some of the deductions have just disappeared completely, and it's creating somewhat of a reaction from the taxpayers out there. And with that, Daniel, good evening. Thanks for joining us. So why is this a good thing after all?
Well, first of all, Lockwood, let's be clear on what I say is a good thing.
Right.
The news reports are saying that the tax refunds are down.
Right.
And they're blaming that on alleged increased tax liabilities. And that's only half right. The initial data shows that tax refunds are down by about 9%. That's true. But that does not mean that your tax liability went up, and this is where the disconnect is.
Oh.
People, you don't have an increased tax liability just because your tax refund went down. Your tax refund went down because you didn't pay in as much taxes to the IRS to begin with. See, this is what the news reports are missing. Beginning January of 2018, January 1st.
That's right.
The IRS adjusted all the withholding tables. So less money was taken out of people's paychecks every month to begin with. Now, here's what the reality is with the tax cut. The top 20% of income earners in the United States under the Tax Act, we're going to see the same or slight or an increased tax liability. There's just no question about that. All the studies have shown that. The bottom 80% of taxpayers, we're going to see a tax cut. And so because of the tax cut, the IRS adjusted the withholding tables. Now, even at that, the Treasury data shows that the refunds are only down by about 9%. All right, so let's keep this so let's put this in perspective now. Mm-hmm. The average tax refund is about $3,000. So just to make the math simple, if you're getting a 10% cut, that means there's a $300 less in your refund. But all of that money was paid to you in increased wage withholding over the course of the year. So this is what people are missing, is the fact that they're getting their refunds in their paychecks every month.
That excellent observation. Daniel Pilla with us this evening. By the way, taxhelponline.com, if you want to get information about him. How to Win Your Tax Audit, and there are a few other books he's written. We'll get to those in a moment. Daniel, that's an excellent observation on your part, and a clarity that I hadn't even considered. We are so used to getting our money from Uncle Sam, which, by the way, is a misconception. That's our money. We're just getting back.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You don't get a refund because the government got religion and decided to give you free money. That's money that you didn't owe to begin with. And see, this is the thing. I've been preaching this for years. If you get the average tax refund of, let's say, $3,000, that means you're paying about $275 a month in and month out, to the government that you don't owe. And you don't get that money back until the next year. And in fact, it's not even that. You've got to wait until you file your tax return to get it back. So we're talking about another, 13 or 14 months, 15 months in some cases before you get your refund back. And by that time, you're 3 or 4 months into another year of over-withholding, of paying too much. Mm-hmm. So you're never even with the IRS. You're never square. They're always holding your money, and the worst part of it, perhaps the worst part of it, they don't pay a nickel's worth of interest on that over-withholding.
Really?
They don't give you any interest on that
really?
money. No, not a dime.
I'm shocked. I'm absolutely stunned by that fact. Dan Pilla with us.
What a surprise!
What a surprise! But Uncle Sugar is looking out for my benefit. I'm confident. I mean, Uncle Sam. All right. This being said, let's talk about this in relationship to how people need to, if you will, educate themselves. We have gotten to the point where, and of course, I'm one of these who's not a big fan of withholding. I'm not a big fan of it simply because it removes the pain of paying Uncle Sam, every paycheck. Whereas if every employee has to sit down and write out a check, which, by the way, is going away very quickly, unfortunately, they would understand that they're really subsidizing the federal government. But by simply removing it from the paycheck before the employee ever sees it, Well, they're clueless, to be blunt. And now we're...
Yeah, you're exactly right. You couldn't be more correct. If people had to sit down and write a check every month for their taxes, the way they pay their mortgage payment or their rent or their car payment, there'd be a march on Washington inside of a year.
Right.
You talk about the Million Man March. You wouldn't even be able to count the number of people that would show up in protest of this if people had to write the check. But this is exactly why they take the money out of people's paychecks. In that sense, the tax becomes hidden.
Right.
People don't know what they're paying, and they don't realize how much they're paying to the government because they're getting money back every year.
And, of course, last year the change in the tax law was so radical and happened so quickly that a lot of people, I know as an employer, had some challenges getting the new tax records, documents established. And then they went to the employees, and many of the employees said, well, just keep it as it was last year. Basically giving the federal government, to your point a few moments ago, extra cash without having to pay interest. This coming year, though, I'm wondering, Daniel, is this... will there be a greater interest on the part of the taxpayers to say, wait a second, maybe we need to look at what we're paying?
Well, that's a good question, and I don't see any evidence that that's going to happen, Lockwood, because the fact of the matter is that statistically about 80, well, it's more like probably 75% of every tax return filed gets a tax refund. All right, now I've been in this business for over 40 years, and those numbers have been constant all that time. So I just don't know why people don't sit down, spend more time paying attention to their withholding, because the money is so much more valuable in your hands than in the government's hands. And it baffles me why people don't do that. But, this is one of the things that I provide help with on my website, taxhelponline.com, so folks can get through this morass of regulations without being buried by it.
Again, Daniel Pilla with us. Pilla, by the way, is the spelling of his last name. Daniel, let's talk about this in relationship also of the recent shutdown, government shutdown. What impact could that have on tax filings and refunds?
Well, the government, the IRS told us all along, Lockwood, that there wasn't going to be any impact on tax return season. As a matter of fact, as the shutdown ground on, I think it was resolved about January 24th or 25th, somewhere in there. Forget the exact date, but it was about a week before that, maybe 10 days before that the IRS called back to work about 40,000 employees whose job specifically was going to be return processing and issuing refunds. So at this point in time, they're telling us that there's going to be no impact on issuing refunds and processing tax returns. Of course, only time will tell whether that's true or not, but at this point in time, I haven't seen any reports that they're having particular problems doing that.
In light of the fact, Daniel, that we're facing a $22 trillion deficit, and the fact that we are looking now at more debt being piled on as we move forward, is there a possibility in your mind that we're going to be seeing some major changes in tax codes to address the need for more cash?
Well, I think that's true. I think as time goes on, and Washington is less and less concerned about the debt every day. The fact of the Green New Deal and the bombastic proposal that was to spend more money in inconceivable areas like making homes more comfortable, for example. There's no way there's ever going to be enough money through the current tax system to collect that kind of revenue. So that means they have to go out and break thumbs, and that's why people need to understand what their rights are, Lockwood, because the IRS is nonpartisan in that sense. Whatever the laws are that are passed, they go out and they break thumbs to get the money. So you got to know what your rights are to protect yourself from that.
And of course, the organization we're talking about is taxhelponline.com. Taxhelponline.com. Our guest this afternoon, the principal of the company, Daniel Pilla. Daniel, before we wrap it up with you, looking at the news of the past couple of weeks related to the issue of refunds and how certain folks, particularly those high-income folks who have mortgages that exceed the amount that's deductible, and what is that, $250? Am I correct? About right?
Well, there's two different rules, Lockwood, that you're referring to. The one is the cap on state and local income taxes.
Okay.
Deduction for state and local income taxes. That's capped at $10,000. And then there's the mortgage interest cap.
Rate.
So you can't deduct mortgage interest on a loan above $750,000. And so those are the two limitations you're thinking of.
And of course that's creating a little bit of heartache for those who are well heeled. So
it's creating hardship for those folks that are in high tax states.
Right.
So what they should do is put pressure on their legislators to cut their state taxes.
Yes, absolutely. New York's a perfect example of that.
Yes, it is. Yep.
Dan Pilla with us this evening. And of course the most recent book, How to Win Your Tax Audit. Am I correct on that?
That's right. How to Win Your Tax Audit. That's right.
And more others such as How to Get Tax Amnesty, etc. Go to the website to check that out. Dan, thank you very much for your time this evening. Thank you for correcting me on my introduction, but what the heck? I had to make it difficult for you anyhow.
Sure, of course. Throw me a curveball.
You've got it. Dan, pleasure. Take it. Thanks for being with us this evening.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. Viewpoints here on the Talk Station, FM 107 AM 1240. Stay tuned. We'll be wrapping things up here in just a moment.